Morgan took a moment to compose herself. Then she began. We'd grown up listening to the stories, everyone had. You'd think that maybe living down the street from the house we'd eventually get used to it, but I never did. I could never look at it without getting creeped out. I hate being scared. And finally, a couple of weeks ago, I decided to do something about it. The breath hitched in her throat before she went on. I didn't tell you or anyone else at school because I was afraid you'd make fun of me. This just sort of became my pet project. I started at the library. I went through all the old records they had to find out everything I could about the house. There's a lot, more than a lot. Wicker was basically the closest thing this town had to a celebrity back in the day. So the newspapers carried the story for weeks after he died. Hit it from every angle. One thing they had absolutely no information on was his wife. She moved over to the desk and picked up one of the old newspapers. The only hard evidence I could find to show that she even for sure existed was this article. She passed the paper to Jamie. The top of the article on the page was devoted to Lady Wicker, recounting stories and speculations that various people around the town had made about her. It was accompanied by a picture of the second-floor story house in much better condition than it currently stood, and Jamie could see the fuzzy image of a woman standing in the window, the only detail a surprising sharpness of her eyes. Finally, I got all I could out of the papers. For the amount of stories they ran after Wicker's death, they had surprisingly little actual information about him. So last week I decided to go inside and see if I could find anything. I figured maybe once I saw what was in there, I'd be scared less. Claire insisted on going with me. You know how little siblings are. She looked pointedly at Lester before continuing. I really hadn't thought we'd find anything, but once we snuck in, it looked like the house hadn't been touched in all this time. Once the police completed the investigation, they just sort of closed the front door and walked away. There's so many creepy stories about the place, I think it's kept a lot of people out who would have gone in and gone through it by now. I wish I would have done the same, she sighed. There's still a whole bunch of weird stuff in there. Masks and statues, all sorts of things. The room the picture in the paper shows as Mrs. Wicker's has these symbols scrawled all over the walls. Eventually, we made it our way to the attic. The house is all run down, and some of the stairs were pretty rotten, but the ladder leading up to the attic was still there. I thought if I saw where he had killed himself, that would be enough to cure my fear. So we went up there and poked around. That's where I found this. She tapped the journal. It was getting late, so we went back home. That's when I first started going through the book. I thought the same thing you did, that Wicker must have been nuts. But the worst part was that my fear hadn't gone away. Just the opposite. All the stuff in the book made me even more afraid, even though a part of me was telling myself that it had to be make-believe. The next day I was talking to Claire about it. She laughed at me, said I was scared of stupid, empty house. I told her if she wasn't a scaredy cat, then she should go spend an hour in Mrs. Wicker's old room at midnight. I think she was afraid, but she didn't want to admit it in front of me. You know how little siblings are. She looked at Lester again. So last Saturday, we snuck out again. That's the first day the fog really came in. We were particularly on top of the house before I could see it. I offered to let Claire out of the deal, but she was insistent. Even though she was so scared, she was shaking. I told her that at least I'd lower the terms of the dare. I didn't want to be there any more than she did. All she had to do was go up the stairs to the room and wave to me through the window, and then we'd go home. I had to go in through the gate just to be able to see the window. Claire went up the steps and only looked back once before squeezing through the front door. I didn't know how long I waited standing there, staring at the window, waiting for her to come. It was probably only a minute or two, but it felt like hours. Finally, I saw a figure at the window. It was hard to make out through the fog, but it was definitely person-shaped. I thought it had to be Claire. I mean, what else could it be? It was there for a moment, and I could tell it was looking at me, but then it moved away from the window. I think I must have been holding my breath because I remember I let it out then, thinking that Claire would be back down the stairs in just a minute and we could leave. I'd kid her a little about not having the guts to wave to me, but in reality I was glad she was moving as quickly as she was. Those were the thoughts going through my head when I heard Claire calling me. I looked up, and there she was standing in the window, waving at me clear as day. Even through the fog, she had this huge smile on her face, so proud of what she had done. Morgan choked back a sob. She was just trying to impress me, the little idiot. But I couldn't be happy for her because I knew she looked up at Jamie. I knew she wasn't alone in the house. I yelled at her to get down from there, to run. First, she looked mad that I wasn't giving her the praise she had expected. Then she looked scared. She had this terrified look on her little face when she finally backed away from the window. That was the last time I saw her alive. God, I waited there calling her forever. I was scared that I was so loud I'd wake up my parents down the street. But part of me hoped that would happen, that they'd come. I should have gone in there after her, but I was just so scared. Her eyes were tearing up again. My little sister was in trouble, and I was too big of a coward to do anything about it, Jamie. I must have stood there for 20 minutes just yelling her name. I never heard anything from her. Not a scream, not a sound. Maybe if I had heard something, knew for sure that something was happening, that would have spurred me to run in. But I didn't. I couldn't. Finally, my voice started to go hoarse, and I just sat down on the ground and started to cry. I'm not sure how long I was sitting there sobbing before I noticed the fog had started to get thicken. Suddenly, I became aware of this presence. You know how sometimes you can tell someone is looking at you even when you weren't looking at them? It was like that. I looked up and couldn't make anything out 5 feet in front of me because of the fog. But even so, I could see the pair of eyes staring at me from the front door. She shuddered. I don't know how I know this, but those eyes were happy, Jamie. Happy and hungry. I thought I'd been scared before that. I thought I'd been out of screams. Boy, I was wrong. I turned and ran so fast it was a wonder I didn't knock myself out trying to get through the gate. Even more of a wonder that I managed to find my way back to the house through the fog, but I did, screaming and crying and blubbering the whole way. By that point, I actually had managed to wake up my parents with all the noise I was making. They were at the front door when I just about collapsed on the welcome mat. It took 'em a while to get me calmed down enough to tell them what had happened. My dad grabbed a flashlight and headed over to the house. He searched until morning, but didn't find anything, no trace of Claire or what or who took her. Then he called the police. She sighed. They've had me tell them the story over and over again, hoping I could give them some clue about who took Claire, some detail. Even if I could have seen more clearly through the fog, I didn't think I would be able to help. Did you know there's lots of missing kids in the wake? It's been going on for a while now, Jamie. I'll bet even longer than they think or would admit it. I'll bet it's been going on since the night Thomas Wicker threw himself out his attic window. Since the night she got out. She opened the book on her lap and absently started to leaf through the pages. It's all in here. The stuff Wicker saw, that he encountered. She was one of them. That thing everyone thought was his wife. He kept her locked away up there in the room so that she'd never be free. But she got free, and Wicker decided he'd rather kill himself than face what he knew she would do once she was. She paused blankly, staring at the book. Now hang on a second, Morgan, Jamie cut in. Nothing you saw proves anything that's in the book is true. I mean, I certainly believe that you saw someone in the house, and in all likelihood, they're the one who took Claire, but there's nothing about another of those eyes that suggest there are ghosts or demons or whatever that are responsible for this. And that could have just been your mind playing tricks on you. It was just probably some homeless guy. They haven't found the body. Claire could still be out there. Morgan looked up, a small, sad smile on her face. Oh, Jamie, don't you get it? They won't find the body. Jamie felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand at attention. What do you mean, Morgan? How can you be so sure? Because remember how I said, when she moved away from the window, that was the last time I saw her alive? I didn't say it was the last time I saw her. It's why I haven't been able to sleep. Morgan shivered slightly, took a breath. Claire comes to me every night out of the fog. She looks at me through my window with her black, empty eyes, her hand lightly tapping on the pane like she wants to come inside, but somehow I know that's not at all. It's not that she wants to be let in. It's that she wants me to come out. But Morgan, Lester whispered, wide-eyed, your room is on the second floor. She threw back her head and laughed. I know, wild, isn't it? Her eyes narrowed as she looked at Jamie with an accusing expression. So, any more bright ideas or thoughts about how crazy I am? Jamie shook his head. Have you told your parents, the police? Morgan chuckled at that. Told them what exactly? That some demon succubus stole my little sister and turned her into a monster? Come on, Jamie. You know they'd never believe that, even with the journal to back up my story. You could have them stay with you, show her to them. Already tried it. She doesn't come when other people are around. Just makes the adults give each other concerned glances when they think I'm not looking. No, I'm going to have to do this myself. Jamie's voice, almost at a whisper. Do what exactly? Morgan's mouth drew into a tight, hard smile. Why, put the bitch back in her cage, of course. Jamie only hesitated a moment before he nodded. Okay, what can I do to help?